What do you do when the victim becomes the detective? When a man vanishes without a trace, it's a tragedy. When he leaves behind a trail of clues meant only for those brave enough to follow, it becomes something else entirely. On the evening of October 14th, Dr. Marcus Holloway, a forensic psychologist known for profiling some of the country's most elusive criminals, disappeared from his locked home. No signs of forced entry. No struggle. No body. But in his study, investigators found something chilling. A leather journal, filled with dates, symbols, and a single message scrawled on the final page. If you're reading this, I'm already gone. But I'm not lost. Follow the breadcrumbs. Was this a suicide note? A kidnapping? Or something far stranger, a man orchestrating his own investigation from beyond the veil of his disappearance? The clock is ticking. The clues are waiting, and the deeper we go, the more we realize Dr. Holloway didn't just vanish. E planned Italiano. Detective Sarah Chen stood on the front porch of 428 Maple Drive, coffee in and watching the sun bleed orange through the oak trees. The house before her was ordinary in every sense, white colonial, black shutters, a garden known by the mailbox, the kind of place where nothing ever happens, except something had. No forced entry, Officer Ramirez said, stepping aside as Sarah ducked under the yellow tape. Neighbor called it in yesterday evening. Said she hadn't seen Dr. Holloway in 2 days, which was unusual. He always waves, apparently. Always on schedule. Sarah nodded, her eyes already scanning the windows. Curtains drawn, lights off. The house had that particular stillness-y kind that feels less like absence and more like held breath. Inside, the air was stale but not rotten. No decay. No blood. The living room was immaculate. Books aligned on shelves. Throw pillows arranged with geometric precision. A faint scent of sandalwood incense lingering near the mantel. Upstairs? Sarah asked. Bedrooms untouched. Bed made. Bathroom clean. Ramirez flipped through his notepad. But the study, that's where it gets weird. They climbed the staircase, each step creaking in the silence. At the end of the hall, a door stood ajar. Light from the window slicing across hardwood floors. Sarah pushed it open. The study was chaos disguised as order. Papers covered the desk case files, psychiatric evaluations, newspaper clippings arranged in overlapping layers like a collage of obsession. A leather chair sat pushed back at an angle, as if someone had stood abruptly. On the desk, a tumbler of scotch, condensation still faintly visible on the glass. But it was the journal that caught her attention. Leather-bound, thick, edges worn from handling. It sat open in the center of the desk, a black pen resting in the crease. Sarah leaned closer, careful not to touch anything yet. The handwriting was precise, almost architectural. Dates, initials, symbols she didn't recognize, circles within circles, arrows pointing to margins filled with smaller notes. And then, on the final page, written in larger script, if you're reading this, I'm already gone, but I'm not lost. Follow the breadcrumbs. Sarah exhaled slowly. Get forensics in here. I want every page photographed, every surface dusted. Ramirez hesitated. You think this is a suicide note? I think, Sarah said, her gaze fixed on the journal, that Dr. Marcus Holloway wants us to find him, and he's going to make us work for it. She straightened, glancing around the study. Everything here was intentional. The glass of scotch still cold, meaning he'd left recently or wanted them to think so. The chair pushed back in haste, or staged to look that way. Even the journal, open to that exact page. Marcus Holloway was a forensic psychologist. He'd spent his career getting inside the minds of killers, understanding their patterns, predicting their moves. Now, it seemed, he'd become the puzzle. By noon, the house was swarming with technicians. Sarah stood in the front yard, scrolling through Marcus Holloway's background on her tablet. Age 47. Divorced, no children. Worked as a consultant for the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit for 12 years before going private, his specialty. Offender profiling, particularly cases involving calculated predator serial offenders who planned meticulously and left little evidence. His reputation was sterling. Testimonials from colleagues praised his intuition, his ability to see patterns where others saw noise. But there were also notes in his file mentions of burnout, a leave of absence 3 years ago after a particularly gruesome case in Oregon. Detective Chun looked up. A woman in her 60s stood at the edge of the driveway, clutching a cardigan despite the mild temperature. Her eyes were red. "I'm Caroline Watts. I live next door. I'm the one who called." Sarah pocketed her tablet. "Mrs. Watts, thank you for reaching out. When did you last see Dr. Holloway?" "Tuesday evening. Around 7, he was bringing in groceries. We waved, like always." Her voice trembled. "He seemed fine. Maybe a little tired, but fine." "Did he mention anything unusual? Any plans to travel?" Carolyn shook her head. "Marcus wasn't the traveling type. He kept to himself, mostly. But he was kind. Always polite." She paused, wringing her hands. "Detective, what's happening? Is he... We don't know yet," Sarah said gently, "but we're doing everything we can to find him." As Caroline returned to her house, Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Ramirez. "You need to see this." Back inside, she found him in the study, holding an evidence bag. Inside, a small brass key, no bigger than her thumb. "Found it taped under the desk drawer," Ramirez said. "No markings. No label." Sarah turned it over in the light. The key was old, worn smooth from use, but there was something etched into the metal tiny, almost invisible unless you knew to look. A number. 1408. A locker. Ramirez guessed. Safe deposit box. Maybe. Sarah bagged it again, her mind already racing. But why hide it? If you wanted us to find it, why not leave it in plain sight like the journal? "Because," a voice said from the doorway, "he's testing you." Sarah turned. A man in his 50s stood there, badge clipped to his belt, graying hair, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Agent Paul Mercer, FBI," he said, stepping inside. "I worked with Marcus for 6 years. When I heard about this, I had to come." "Did he contact you recently?" Sarah asked. Mercer shook his head. "Not in months, but I know how he thinks." He gestured to the journal. "This isn't a cry for help. It's a game." Marcus loved puzzles. He believed the best way to understand someone was to force him to think like you. "So he disappears," Sarah said slowly, "and leaves us clues to make us think like him." "Exactly." Mercer's expression darkened. "But here's what worries me. Marcus doesn't do anything without reason. If he's gone to this much trouble, there's something he couldn't solve any other way. Something that required him to vanish." Sarah looked back at the journal, at those final words. "Follow the breadcrumbs." "Then we follow," she said. By evening, the forensics team had combed through every inch of the house. No blood, no struggle, no indication of foul play except for the deliberate staging of the study. Sarah sat at the precinct, the journal spread before her under fluorescent lights. She'd been staring at it for hours, trying to decode the symbols, the cryptic notes in the margins. Most of it was professional case references, behavioral notes, psychological profiles, but interspersed throughout were personal entries. Brief, fragmented. September 3rd. They're watching again. September 10th. Can't prove it, not yet. September 18th. If I'm right, everything changes. Who's they? Sarah muttered. Ramirez set a fresh coffee on her desk. Forensics came back on the scotch glass. Only one set of prints. No drugs, no poison. Just scotch. And the key. Still working on it. We've checked local banks, storage facilities. Nothing yet. Sarah flipped to the final page again, studying the message. Batistein, something caught her edge, a tiny notation in the bottom corner, almost hidden in the binding shadow. She angled the journal toward the light. St. Michael's, 10 p.m. Alone. Her pulse quickened. St. Michael's was an old church on the south side, closed for renovations years ago. Abandoned now. Ramirez, she said, standing abruptly. Get your jacket. Why? What is it? Sarah closed the journal. Already heading for the door. We've got our first breadcrumb. Sarah pulled up to the curb at 9:47 p.m., killing the headlights. The church loomed against the night sky, Gothic revival architecture gone to seed. Its spire cracked, stained glass windows boarded over with plywood. Chain-link fencing surrounded the property, plastered with warnings. Condemned. Nitrogen monoxide trespassing. This feels like a trap, Ramirez said from the passenger seat, hand resting on his holster. Sarah couldn't disagree. Everything about this screamed set up the cryptic message. The abandoned location, the instruction to come alone. But Marcus had been specific, and if there was one thing she'd learned in the past 12 hours, it was that Marcus Holloway didn't leave instructions without purpose. Stay here, she said, opening the door. Keep your radio on. If I'm not out in 20 minutes, I'm coming in. Ramirez finished. Be careful, detective. She slipped through a gap in the fence, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The church grounds were overgrown, weeds pushing through cracked concrete, ivy climbing the stone walls like grasping fingers. An old cemetery stretched behind the building, headstones tilting at drunken angles. The front doors were chained shut, but a side entrance hung open, one hinge torn free. Sarah paused at the threshold, listening. Silence. Then, from somewhere deep inside the faint groan of settling wood, she stepped inside. The air was thick with must and decay. Her flashlight beam swept across empty pews. Their wood warped and split. Debris littered the floor-broken glass. Bird droppings, pages from old hymnals, scattered like dead leaves. The altar at the far end was draped in shadow, a large crucifix hanging crooked above it. Dr. Holloway, she called out, voice echoing. Nothing. She moved down the center aisle, footsteps loud in the stillness. As she approached the altar, something caught her eye. Flicker of light from the side chapel, barely visible through a half-open door. Sarah's hand moved to her weapon. Police? Show yourself. No response. She approached the door slowly, pushing it open with her foot. The chapel was small, circular, designed for private prayer. But what stopped her wasn't the architecture, it was what sat in the center of the room. A wooden table, and on it, a manila folder, a digital recorder, and a single photograph. Sarah approached cautiously, scanning the shadows. Empty. She was alone. The photograph showed a young woman, maybe 25, dark hair pulled back, bright smile. Written on the back in Marcus's handwriting. Elena Voss. Batian, 1408. March 2019. The same number from the key. Sarah's pulse quickened. She opened the folder. Inside, psychiatric evaluation forms, session notes, all bearing Marcus's signature. But these weren't official documents. No hospital letterhead. No formal stamps. These were private sessions. She skimmed the notes. Elena Voss had come to Marcus 6 years ago, complaining of nightmares, paranoia, the feeling of being watched. Marcus had diagnosed acute anxiety, possibly PTSD, though the source remained unclear. Then, abruptly, the session stopped. The final note, dated April 2019. Patient terminated treatment against medical advice. Expressed fear for safety. Refused to elaborate. Attempted follow-up unsuccessful. Last known address? Redacted. Sarah reached for the recorder, pressing play. Static. Then Marcus's voice, measured and calm despite the slight tremor underneath. If you found this, Detective Chen, then you're exactly who I hoped would take this case. No. I've followed your work, the Riverside murders, the Brennan kidnapping. You see patterns. You trust your instincts. That's why I'm trusting you now. A pause, the sound of him taking a breath. 6 years ago, I treated a woman named Elena Voss. She came to me terrified, convinced someone was following her, watching her home, orchestrating events in her life. At first, I thought it was paranoia, but the more we talked, the more I realized she was right. Sarah's grip tightened on the recorder. Elena disappeared 3 weeks after our last session. No body. No evidence. Police ruled it a voluntary disappearance, but I knew better. I spent years trying to find proof, trying to connect the dots. And recently, ... I found it. Someone has been watching Detective, not just Elena. Others. A pattern spanning decades. Another pause. Longer this time, but to expose them, I had to become invisible. I had to disappear the way Elena did. The way the others did. Because the person responsible, they're still out there. And they're very, very careful. The recording crackled. The key will lead you to the next breadcrumb. Trust the evidence. Trust yourself. And whatever you do, don't trust anyone who tells you to stop looking. Silence. Then the recorder clicked off. Sarah stood in the chapel for a long moment, the weight of Marcus's words settling over her. He hadn't disappeared. He'd vanished himself, a calculated move to investigate from the shadows, to become the ghost hunting ghosts. She bagged the folder and recorder, then studied the photograph again. Elena Voss. Patient number 1408. The same number from the key. Her radio crackled. Chun, you okay in there? She pressed the button. I'm good. Coming out now. Outside. Ramirez met her at the fence line. Find anything. Everything, Sarah said grimly, and nothing. Back at the precinct, she spread the contents of the folder across her desk. It was past midnight, but sleep was impossible now. She pulled up Elena Voss's missing persons report from 2019. Age 24 at time of disappearance. Last seen leaving her apartment complex in the West End. No signs of struggle. Vehicle found abandoned at a grocery store parking lot 3 days later. Keys still in the ignition. The case had gone cold within weeks. Sarah cross-referenced the address on Marcus's notes. With the police report, they Imache, but the redacted address in his final note was different from where Elena had moved before she vanished. She dug deeper, searching property records, utility bills. Their forwarding address from March 2019, just weeks before Elena disappeared. 1247 Ashford Lane. An apartment building on the east side. Ramirez, she called. Ross the bullpen. He looked up from his own stack of files. We need to visit this address first thing tomorrow, and I want everything we can find on Elena Voss, friends. Family, employment records, phone logs. You think she's connected to Holloway's disappearance? I think she's the reason for it. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check your email. A friend, her stomach tightened. She opened her laptop, refreshing her inbox. One new message. No subject line. No text. Just an attachment. A video file labeled Watch Me. She glanced around the precinct. Everyone was focused on their own work. She plugged in her headphones and hit play. The footage was grainy, black and white, clearly from a security camera. A dimly lit hallway. A woman, Elena Voss. Sarah recognized her from the photo, walking toward the camera, glancing over her shoulder. She looked frightened. Then, at the far end of the hall, a figure appeared. Tall, face obscured by shadow. They didn't move, just stood there, watching Elena. She broke into a run. The figure followed. The video cut to black. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she pulled off the headphones. She immediately opened her email header information, trying to trace the sender. Encrypted. Routed through multiple servers. Untraceable. Someone was watching this investigation. Someone who knew she'd found the recorder. Someone who wanted her to see this. But why? To help. To intimidate, or to lead her exactly where they wanted her to go. By 3 a.m., Sarah had built a timeline. Elena Voss wasn't the only one, digging through missing persons databases, cross-referencing Marcus's case files. She found 5 others over the past 15 years. All young women, all reported feeling watched before they vanished. And all had disappeared without a trace, no bodas, no evidence. Just ... Gone! 2008. Rebecca Choi, 26. Graduate student, 2011. Samantha Pierce, 24. Legal assistant, 2014. Kira Osman, 25. Software developer, 2017. Jennifer Wu, 26. Nurse, 2019. Elena Voss, 24. Freelance graphic designer. Different backgrounds, different cities within the state. No obvious connection except that each had filed at least one police report about stalking or harassment in the months before vanishing. Reports that led nowhere. Cases that went cold, and Marcus had notes on all of them. Jesus! Ramirez breathed, looking over her shoulder at the board she'd assembled. Photos, timelines, red string connecting the dots. How did nobody see this pattern? Because they disappeared in different jurisdictions, Sarah said. Different detectives, different departments. No one was looking at them as connected, except Marcus. So what changed? Why disappear now? Sarah pointed to Marcus's final journal entry. He said he recently found proof, something that connected all these cases, something that made him a target. The person behind it. Exactly. Sarah turned back to the board. Marcus spent 6 years investigating in the open, consulting, interviewing, gathering evidence. But if the person responsible realized he was getting close, ... that they'd come for him. So he vanished first. Became a ghost on a ghost. That apartment, 1247 Ashford Lane. That's where Elena was living when she disappeared. If Marcus left us that address, there's something there he wants us to find. They arrived at the building just as dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple. The complex was old, but maintained brick facade, iron fire escapes, small balconies cluttered with plants and bicycles. Unit 304, Elena's former apartment. According to records, it had been re-rented twice since 2019. Current tenant, a college student named David Park. Sarah knocked. No answer. She knocked again, louder. The door cracked open, chain still attached. A young man peered out, bleary-eyed. Yeah, Detective Sarah Chen. This is Officer Ramirez. We need to ask you a few questions about this apartment. David blinked. Is something wrong? Just routine. May we come in? He hesitated, then unlatched the chain. The apartment was small studio layout kitchen along one wall. Futon serving as both couch and bed. Textbooks scattered everywhere. How long have you lived here? Sarah asked. Since August. Why? What's this about? Did you notice anything unusual when you moved in? Anything left behind by previous tenants? Not really. Place was pretty empty. He scratched his head. Wait, there was something. Behind the bathroom mirror. I found it when I was fixing the mounting bracket. Sarah's pulse quickened. Show me. In the tiny bathroom, David pointed to the medicine cabinet mirror. The bracket was loose, so I took it down to tighten it. That's when I saw it. Sarah carefully removed the mirror. Behind it, tucked into the wall cavity, a small waterproof bag. She pulled it out, hands steady despite the adrenaline. Inside, a flash drive and a folded piece of paper. The note was in Elena's handwriting. Sarah compared it to samples from her apartment lease. If someone finds this, please help me. I don't know who to trust anymore. Everything is on the drive. All the proof. He knows where I live. He's always watching. His name is... The sentence ended abruptly, ink smudged, as if she'd been interrupted. Sarah looked at Ramirez. We need to see what's on this drive. Now, the flash drive sat on Sarah's desk like a live grenade. She'd spent the past hours setting up an air-gapped laptop isolated from the precinct network. No internet connection, no risk of whatever might be on that drive spreading or alerting anyone monitoring their systems. Ramirez stood behind her, arms crossed, as the drive's contents loaded. 12 video files, dated from February 2019 to April 2019. The final one uploaded just 2 days before Elena vanished. Sarah clicked the first file. Elena's face filled the screen, lit by the harsh glow of a laptop camera. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back messily, hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the frame. I don't know if anyone will ever see this, she began, voice barely above a whisper. But I need to document everything, in case something happens to me. She glanced toward a window off camera, then back. It started 3 months ago. Small things at first. Items moved in my apartment when I was certain I'd left them somewhere else. My coffee mug on the wrong side of the sink. A book facing the opposite direction. I told myself I was being forgetful, stressed from work. Elena's eyes glistened. Then I started noticing him. A man. Different places. Different times. But always... there. At the coffee shop, where I work in the mornings. Outside the grocery store, standing across the street from my building. Never approaching. Never speaking. Just watching. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos. The screen showed blurry images of a figure in a dark coat, face obscured by distance or angle. Different locations, different times of day. I went to the police. Filed a report. They said without a clear threat, without him actually approaching me, there was nothing they could do. They suggested I was being paranoid. A bitter laugh. So I found Dr. Holloway. He believed me. He was the only one who listened, who didn't make me feel crazy. He started helping me document everything, teaching me how to recognize patterns, how to stay safe. Elena leaned closer to the camera, but then I found out I'm not the only one. Dr. Holloway told me carefully, because of confidentiality, that he'd seen this pattern before. Other women. Other cases. He's been researching it for years. The video ended abruptly. Sarah sat back, processing. Marcus had been right. Elena hadn't been paranoid. She'd been targeted. Next one, Ramirez said quietly. The second video showed Elena in the same position, but different clothes. Days later, I moved apartments. Didn't tell anyone the new address except my parents and Dr. Holloway. I thought maybe if I just disappeared from his radar, he'd move on. Her expression darkened. He found me anyway. 3 days ago, I came home to find my door unlocked. Nothing taken, nothing broken. But my laptop was open, even though I always close it. And on the screen, a document I'd been writing about him, about everything I'd noticed. Elena's voice cracked. The last paragraph, the one I hadn't written yet, was finished. In my words, my style, like he'd been reading my mind. It just said, "But you can never really hide, can you, Elena?" Sarah felt a chill crawl down her spine. They watched all 12 videos in succession, taking notes, building a timeline. With each recording, Elena grew more frightened, more desperate. She documented everything, photos of the figure following her, screenshots of her social media showing someone had accessed her accounts, timestamps proving her location had been tracked. But it was the final video that shattered everything Sarah thought she understood. Elena appeared almost resigned, hollow-eyed. "I know who he is now." Sarah leaned forward. "His name is Thomas Grayson. He's a systems analyst. Works for a tech company that installs security systems. Manages data infrastructure for half the city banks, hospitals, municipal buildings. Dr. Holloway helped me figure it out. Elena held up a printed photograph of professional headshot from a company website. The man was handsome in a bland, forgettable way. Mid-40s, clean-cut. The kind of face that blurred into crowds. He has access to everything. Security cameras, building access logs, GPS, tracking. He's been watching me through the very systems meant to keep me safe, and he's been doing it to others for years. She set the photo down. Dr. Holloway found record security footage requests, database queries, all linked back to Grayson's credentials. But here's the thing. It's all technically legal. He works for the company. He has authorization. Unless we can prove intent, prove he's using that access to stalk and harm people, there's nothing law enforcement can do. Elena's hands clenched into fists. So we're building a case. Reality dense. Dr. Holloway has contacts at the FBI. Once we have enough proof, we'll take it to them. But until then, ... She looked directly into the camera, and Sarah saw something shift in her expression from fear to determination. If you're watching this, if something has happened to me, you need to know Thomas Grayson is dangerous. Not because he's violent, I don't think he's ever physically harmed anyone, but because he's patient. Methodical. He doesn't need to touch you to destroy you. He just needs to make you feel like you're losing your mind. The recording ended. Silence filled the room. Tomas Grayson Ramirez finally said, already typing on his phone, "I'm running him now." Sarah stared at the frozen image of Elena's face. A woman who'd tried everything, documented everything, and still vanished without a trace. How many others had done the same? Ramirez looked up, face pale. Got him. Thomas Grayson, 49, lives in Arlington Heights. He's employed by SecureNet Solutions. That a major contractor for the city. Do security installations, IT infrastructure management, data analytics, pool his employment records. I want to know every building, every system he's had access to. Cross-reference with the locations where our missing women lived and worked. While Ramirez worked, Sarah opened Marcus's journal again, reading more carefully now. Notes in the margins suddenly made sense. TG access logs. 2008 present security request patterns correlate with disappearances. Can prove intent without victim testimony. Need to make him reveal himself. That last line stopped her cold. Need to make him reveal himself. Oh, Marcus, she whispered. What did you do? Her phone buzzed. Another email from the unknown sender. She opened it, pulse racing. A single line of text. He's watching you too now. Be careful who you trust. Attached, a photograph, taken yesterday, showing Sarah entering St. Michael's Church. Someone had been there. Someone had documented her following Marcus's breadcrumbs. Was it Grayson? Or someone else entirely? By noon, they had Thomas Grayson's entire professional history spread across the conference room. The pattern was undeniable. Every missing woman had lived or worked in a building where SecureNet Solutions had installed security systems. Everyone had filed complaints about feeling watched in the months before disappearing, and every time, Grayson had been the lead technician on those installations. It's circumstantial, Ramirez said, frustration evident. A good lawyer would tear this apart. Which is why Marcus couldn't bring it to law enforcement directly, Sarah replied. He needed more. He needed to catch Grayson in the act. She stood, pacing. Think about it. Marcus disappears, leaves breadcrumbs leading us directly to Elena's case, to Grayson's pattern. He's not just investigating, he's creating a new case. A fresh victim. Himself. Exactly. Marcus made himself bait. Sarah pointed to the journal. He wanted Grayson to target him, to make a mistake, to leave evidence that could actually stick. But if Grayson is as careful as Elena suggested, how would Marcus force his hand? Sarah picked up the journal, flipping to a section she'd marked earlier. Marcus wrote about understanding predatory behavior. The key to catching someone who operates from the shadows is to threaten their sense of control. Make them feel exposed. Make them act rashly. Her eyes widened. The journal. The breadcrumbs. This entire investigation, it's theater. Marcus isn't just leaving clues for us. He's leaving them for Grayson too. Showing him that someone knows. Someone is closing in. Someone is about to expose everything. So Grayson would have to respond, Ramirez said slowly. Have to stop the investigation. Which means showing himself. Making mistakes. Leaving evidence. Sarah's phone rang. Agent Mercer's name on the screen. Detective Chen. His voice was tight. I've been going through Marcus's recent case files. The ones he kept private. I think I know where he is. Where? Marcus purchased property 6 months ago under an LLC. An old farmhouse, 40 minutes outside the city. Remote. Off-grid, the perfect place to disappear to. Sarah grabbed her jacket. Send me the address. Already done. But, Detective. Mercer Post. Marcus wouldn't hide there unless he had a reason. If you're going, bring backup and be ready for anything. The line went dead. Ramirez was already checking his weapon. You think? He's there. I think, Sarah said. Heading for the door. We're about to find out if Marcus is the hunter or the prey. They took to car Sarah and Ramirez in the lead, to patrol units following. The drive took them out of the city, through suburbs that gradually gave way to farmland and forest. The GPS led them down increasingly narrow roads until they turned onto a gravel driveway, barely visible through overgrown trees. The farmhouse appeared through the branches like something from a ghost story. 2 stories, white paint peeling, shutters hanging crooked. A detached barn leaned precariously nearby. No vehicles visible. No signs of recent activity. But as they approached, Sarah noticed something. Fresh tire tracks in the gravel. Recent. Within the last day or two. Someone's been here, she said quietly. They approached with weapons drawn, splitting up Sarah and Ramirez, taking the front. Patrol units circling to the back. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the house was surprisingly clean. Minimal furniture, but what was there appeared cared for. A laptop sat open on a kitchen table, screen dark. Papers scattered nearby. Sarah moved through the first floor. Clearing rooms. Living room. Empty. Bathroom. Unused. Kitchen. Coffee pot still warm. Upstairs, Ramirez cold. She took the stairs, 2 at a time. The second floor had 3 rooms, 2 bedrooms, and what appeared to be an office. The office door was closed. Sarah tested the handle. Locked. Dr. Holloway. It's Detective Chen. We're here to help. Silence. She stepped back, prepared to force the door, when it swung open. Marcus Holloway stood there, alive, thinner than his photos, beard grown out. He looked exhausted but alert, and he was holding a gun. Detective, he said calmly, you're 2 hours.
Really?
That's going to be a problem. Sarah's hand remained steady on her weapon, but she didn't aim it. Not yet. Dr. Holloway, she said carefully, put the gun down. We're not your enemy. Marcus didn't move. His eyes swept past her to Ramirez in the hallway, then back. He looked like a man who'd been awake for days of rimmed eyes. Clothes rumpled, a manic energy barely contained beneath a facade of control. You don't understand, he said. You weren't supposed to arrive until 3 o'clock. I have everything timed precisely. If you're here now, we found Elena's flash drive, Sarah interrupted. We know about Thomas Grayson. We know what you've been doing. Something flickered across Marcus's face. Relief. Fear. It was gone before she could name it. Then you know why I couldn't come forward, he said. Why I had to disappear. To catch him. To make yourself bait. Sarah took a cautious step forward. But Marcus, this isn't the way. Whatever you're planning isn't the way. His laugh was hollow. I spent 6 years doing it the right way, Detective. Building cases, gathering evidence, working with authorities. And you know what happened? Nothing. Elena vanished. The others before her vanished. Because Grayson operates inside the system, he is the system. Marcus lowered the gun slightly, exhaustion creeping into his voice. He watches through security cameras he installed, tracks through GPS systems he maintains, accesses databases he's authorized to monitor. Everything he does is technically legal until the moment it isn't, and by then, his victims are already gone. "So you made yourself the next victim," Ramirez said from the doorway. "Made him come after you." "Not just me." Marcus stepped aside, revealing the office behind him. The room was a command center. Monitors lined one wall, showing security camera feeds from multiple locations. A massive corkboard covered another wall. Photographs, documents, red strings connecting names and places. Center. Thomas Grayson's face, surrounded by years of evidence. "I've been documenting everything," Marcus said. "Every time he accesses my security system. Every time he tracks my phone. Every time he queries my credit card transactions. All of it logged, time-stamped, stored in multiple encrypted backups." Sarah holstered her weapon, moving closer to examine the monitors. One showed the exterior of this farmhouse, the driveway where they'd just parked. Another showed a suburban street she didn't recognize. A third displayed the interior of what looked like an office building. "You've been watching him," she said slowly, "while he watches you. Fighting fire with fire." Marcus set his gun on the desk, hands trembling slightly. "But it's not enough. Digital evidence can be explained away, manipulated, dismissed. What we need is for Grayson to physically act, to commit a crime that leaves tangible evidence, which is why you disappeared," Sarah said, understanding crystallizing. "You wanted him to think you'd actually found something actionable, something that could bring him down, make him desperate enough to come here." Marcus finished. "To this property, which he now thinks contains the evidence to destroy him. I've been leaving digital breadcrumbs for weeks, encrypted files with his name on them. Coordinates to this location, emails to FBI contacts that I made sure he could intercept." Ramirez stiffened. "You're using this place as a trap." "The barn," Marcus said, pointing through the window. "I've installed cameras, audio recording, evidence collection equipment. When Grayson comes to destroy what he thinks I have when he breaks in, when he attempts to eliminate the threat, we'll have everything we need. Intent. Action. Proof." Sarah's stomach dropped. "And you were going to be here when he arrived. Use yourself as bait in person. It's the only way to guarantee he shows. It's also the fastest way to get yourself killed," Sarah snapped. "Marcus, he's been making women disappear for 15 years. Whatever he does to them, I know." Marcus's voice was quiet now, haunted. "I've profiled enough killers to know what Grayson is capable of. But I also know he's patient, careful. He doesn't act violently in the moment. He plans, controls, manipulates. If I'm here, he'll try to subdue me, question me about what I know. Who else knows? That gives us time." "Time for what?" "For him to make you disappear, too." Sarah moved closer, voice softening. "You spent 6 years trying to save Elena. But Marcus, you can't save her by becoming her." For the first time, Marcus's composure cracked. His shoulders sagged, and when he looked at Sarah, she saw the weight of all those years, all those missing women pressing down on him. "She trusted me," he whispered. "Elena came to me for help, and I failed her. They all trusted someone, trusted the system, and it failed them. So don't fail them again," Sarah said firmly. "Help us catch him the right way, as a witness, not as bait." Marcus's timeline had been precise. Based on Grayson's pattern of behavior, his work schedule, and the digital breadcrumbs Marcus had laid, he predicted Grayson would arrive at the farmhouse at approximately 3 p.m. Sarah had called for additional backup but ordered them to maintain a perimeter a mile out. If Grayson spotted police presence, he'd vanish and they might never get another chance. Inside the farmhouse, Tay prepared. Marcos walked Sarah through his setup. The barn was rigged with motion sensors, infrared cameras, and audio recording equipment powerful enough to capture conversations from 50 feet away. Everything fed to a secure server off-site, automatically uploading in real time. Even if he destroys the physical equipment, Marcus explained, the evidence is already preserved. But for this to work, we need him to commit an actual crime, Ramirez said. Breaking and entering. Attempt to assault something concrete. He will. Marcus pointed to a file box visible through the barn window. He thinks that contains hard evidence-printed documents, flash drives, testimony transcripts, everything that could put him away. He'll come for it. Sarah studied the setup, and when he does, we move in. Catch him in the act. Exactly. They took position, Sarah and Ramirez, in the house with Marcus watching the monitors. 2 patrol units hidden in the tree line with clear sight lines to the barn. Everyone on radio silence, except for emergency channels. At 2:47 p.m., movement on the perimeter camera. A dark sedan, nondescript, pulled off the main road onto an overgrown service path half a mile from the property. The driver killed the engine. Sarah's pulse quickened. Is that him? Marcus leaned forward, enhancing the image. Through the windshield, a man in his late 40s, clean-cut, wearing dark clothing and gloves. Thomas Grayson, Marcus confirmed. They watched as Grayson sat in his car for several minutes, scanning the area, checking his phone. Cautious. Methodical. Finally, he exited the vehicle and moved through the trees on foot, approaching the farmhouse from the south. He's done reconnaissance, Ramirez murmured. Knows the layout. Of course he does, Marcus said. He's been watching this property since I bought it. Probably has the entire surveillance setup mapped. Grayson circled the farmhouse, staying in the tree line. On the monitors, they watched him check windows, test sight lines, evaluate approaches. Every movement calculated. Then he moved toward the barn. Sarah tensed, hand on her radio. Wait for him to commit. We need the crime. Grayson reached the barn door. It was padlocked. Marcus had made sure of that. Grayson examined the lock, then pulled out a small toolkit. Within 30 seconds, the lock clicked open. Breaking and entering, Ramirez whispered. Grayson entered the barn. The interior cameras showed him moving carefully through the space, avoiding the areas where Marcus had staged obvious evidence collection. Instead, Grayson went straight for the environmental controls check-in for gas leaks, testing structural integrity. What's he doing? Sarah asked. Marcus's face went pale. He's not here to steal evidence. He's here to create an accident. Sarah understood immediately. Grayson would make it look like Marcus had died accidentally. Gas leak, electrical fire, structural collapse. The evidence would be destroyed, and Marcus's death would seem like tragic negligence. No murder. No crime. Just an unfortunate end to an unstable man who disappeared months ago. We move now, Sarah said, keying her radio. All units, subject is in the barn. Move in, carefully. Do not let him leave. They emerged from the house, weapons drawn. The patrol units converged from the tree line. They had Grayson surrounded. Sarah approached the barn door. Thomas Grayson. Police. Come out with your hands visible. Silence. Then, from inside, I'm unarmed. I'm coming out. The door opened slowly. Thomas Grayson emerged, hands raised, expression calm. Tout calme. He looked at the officers surrounding him, at Sarah, and finally at Marcus standing behind her and smiling. Dr. Holloway, he said pleasantly. I was worried about you when you disappeared. I thought perhaps something terrible had happened. The interview room at the precinct was stair-white walls, metal table, observation glass. Thomas Grayson sat with perfect posture, hands folded, looking more like a man attending a business meeting than someone facing multiple felony charges. Sarah sat across from him, folder open. You were caught breaking into a private barn, Mr. Grayson. That's trespassing at minimum. I was concerned about Dr. Holloway, Grayson replied smoothly. He's been missing for weeks. When I tracked his property records publicly available information. Of course, I thought perhaps he might be here. I was checking to see if he needed help with a lockpicking toolkit and gloves. For safety. The property is abandoned. I didn't know what condition it would be in. Sarah leaned back. This was going exactly as Marcus had predicted. Grayson had an answer for everything. Every action explained away by concern and civic responsibility. Let's talk about Elena Voss, she said. Something flickered in Grayson's eyes. Brief, controlled. I'm sorry. Who? Elena Voss. Age 24. Disappeared in April 2019. You installed the security system in her apartment building 3 months before she vanished. I install security systems in hundreds of buildings. Detective. I can't remember every resident. Sarah slid a photograph across the table. This is Elena. Does this help your memory? Grayson studied the photo with apparent sympathy. Such a tragedy when people go missing, but I'm afraid I still don't recall her specifically. What about Rebecca Choi, Samantha Pierce, Kira Osman, Jennifer Wu? Sarah laid out each photograph. You installed security systems in buildings where all of them lived. All disappeared within 6 months of those installations. That's quite a coincidence, Grayson said. Perhaps you should be investigating those security systems rather than me. Clearly, they weren't adequate. It was masterful, Sarah had to admit. Every question deflected, every connection dismissed as circumstantial. Without direct evidence, without a witness, Grayson could maintain plausible deniability forever. Unless... Sarah pulled out her laptop, turning it to face him. Then perhaps you can explain this. She played security footage from the barn specifically, the 90 seconds before police arrived. The video showed Grayson examining the barn's electrical panel, then the gas line running from an external propane tank. Looks like you were checking the safety systems, Sarah said. Except we had experts analyze your actions. You were actually loosening the gas connection and shorting the electrical panel, creating conditions for an explosion that would look accidental. Grayson's expression remained unchanged. That's an interesting interpretation. I would argue I was ensuring the systems were safe before anyone entered. You're good at this? Sarah said. Very good. You've been doing it for 15 years, haven't you? Watching, learning, manipulating, never leaving direct evidence, always maintaining that reasonable doubt. I genuinely don't know what you're implying, Detective. Sarah closed the laptop. Here's what we have, Mr. Grayson. We have your employment records showing access to security systems in buildings where 5 women disappeared. We have testimony from Dr. Holloway about Elena Voss's case. We have digital logs showing you accessed security camera feeds for those buildings at unusual hours. We have footage of you attempting to sabotage a structure. And we have something else. She paused, watching his face. We have Elena's recordings. 12 videos documenting your stalking, your harassment, your surveillance, including footage showing you entering her apartment, accessing her computer, leaving messages you knew only she would understand. For the first time, Grayson's composure wavered slightly, a tightening around his eyes. Those recordings don't exist, he said quietly. Elena's apartment was thoroughly... He stopped. Sarah Ismailith. Thoroughly what, Mr. Grayson? Thoroughly searched, thoroughly cleaned. How would you know that if you were never there? Silence. The recordings were hidden, Sarah continued, somewhere you didn't think to look. And they've been preserved, analyzed, verified. Along with testimony from Dr. Holloway, who Elena consulted, who helped her document everything. Grayson's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, I want a lawyer. Smart choice. Sarah stood, gathering her files. But before I go, primero need to ask, what did you do with them? Elena and the others where? Are they? Grayson looked up at her, and for just a moment, she saw something behind his eyes. Not remorse, not guilt. Something colder. Some questions. Decide softly, don't have answers that will make you feel better, Detective. The holding cell door closed with a metallic clang. Outside, Sarah found Marcus sitting in the hallway, head in his hands. He looked up as she approached. "Will it stick?" he asked. "The charges." "The attempted sabotage at the barn is solid. The stalking evidence from Elena's videos gives us the pattern. Combined with the access logs, the testimony, the circumstantial evidence is. It'll stick. He'll go away for a long time. But we don't know where they are." Marcus's voice cracked. "Elena and the others. We may never know." Sarah sat beside him. He's not talking yet, but eventually, someone like Grayson's someone who's been invisible for so long they want recognition. They want people to understand how clever they were. In time, he might tell us. And if he doesn't, then we keep looking. We use his access logs, his patterns, his digital footprints. We find them, Marcus. However long it takes. They sat in silence for a moment. "I should have done more," Marcus finally said. "When Elena first came to me, I should have. You did everything you could within the system." Sarah interrupted gently, "And when the system failed, you found another way. You saved lives today, Marcus. However many women Grayson would have targeted next, they're safe now because of you. It doesn't feel like enough. It never does, but it matters." Sarah stood, offering him her hand. "Come on. Let's get you officially back from the dead. There's paperwork, debriefings, probably therapy recommendations." Marcus took her hand, pulling himself up. He looked exhausted but lighter somehow, as if a weight he'd carried for 6 years had finally lifted. As they walked toward the exit, Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Well done, Detective. But this was only one monster. The system that protected him, that's still out there. Stay vigilant." A friend. She stopped, reading it twice. The anonymous tipster who'd sent her that first video of Elena. They were still watching, still helping from the shadows. Woe verite. Another victim who'd escaped. A whistleblower inside SecureNet Solutions. Someone else Grayson had targeted who'd managed to survive. Sarah didn't know, but as she watched Marcus step into the sunlight outside the precinct free alive, no longer ago she knew that some mysteries solved themselves in time, and some remained, waiting in the shadows, for the right detective to uncover them. The evidence against Thomas Grayson was overwhelming. The trial took 3 weeks. Testimony from Marcus Holloway, analysis of Elena Voss's recordings, expert witnesses on digital surveillance and stalking patterns, forensic evidence from the barn incident, it all accumulated into an undeniable portrait of a predator who de-weaponized technology. Grayson was convicted on multiple counts: stalking, attempted murder, breaking and entering, and conspiracy to commit murder. The judge sentenced him to 40 years without parole, but the question remained: where were the missing women? On a cold November morning, Sarah received a call from the forensics team. They'd been using Grayson's access logs to map his movements over the past 15 years. Cross-referencing with property records and geographical data, they'd found a storage facility 40 miles outside the city, a unit rented under a shell corporation that traced back to Grayson. Sarah was there when they opened it. Inside, boxers of personal effects, jewelry, identification, photographs, belongings from 5 women who'd vanished without a trace. And at the back, carefully documented in notebooks, locations, GPS coordinates, dates. Grayson had kept records of everything, a meticulous archive of his crimes, including where he'd buried the bodies. Recovery operations began immediately. One by one, the missing women were found, returned to families who'd never stopped looking, who'd never stopped hoping, given the funerals they deserved, the closure that had been stolen from them. Elena Voss was the third recovered. Her parents flew in from Seattle, and Sarah was there when they finally laid their daughter to rest. Marcus attended every funeral. 5 women he'd never met, but had fought for, had sacrificed himself for. At Elena's service, her mother approached him. "Thank you," she whispered through tears, "for not forgetting her, for not giving up." Marcus could only nod, unable to speak past the grief lodged in his throat. Sarah stood in the cemetery as the last of the mourners departed, hands in her coat pockets, against the November chill. Marcus remained at Elena's gravestone, head bowed. After a long moment, "Ahoy, Ned. Does it get easier?" he asked. "Knowing we were too late." "No," Sarah said honestly, "but we make sure it matters. We make sure no one forgets them, and we make sure it doesn't happen again." They walked together through the cemetery, fallen leaves crunching underfoot. "What will you do now?" Sarah asked. "Back to consulting," Marcus shook his head. "I'm starting a foundation for victims of digital stalking. Technology-facilitated abuse, education, resources, advocacy. Alina's parents want to be involved, so do some of the other families." "That's good. Really good." "And you?" Marcus looked at her. "On to the next case?" Sarah smiled slightly. "Always? There's always another mystery. Another person who needs finding. Air. Phone buzzed. Another text from the anonymous number. New case for you, detective. Woman in Riverside. Says someone's watching. Might be nothing. Might be everything." Address attached. A friend, she showed Marcus the message. "Will you go?" he asked. Sarah thought about Elena, about the other women, about every person who'd ever felt invisible, unheard, dismissed as paranoid. "Yeah," she said, "I'll go." Because some mysteries demanded to be solved, some voices demanded to be heard, and some detectives couldn't walk away, not when there were still shadows that needed light.